I see a lot of instances of technology being created in the space where we're treating resilience as a spectrum. To me, it kind of doesn't make sense. Web3 cloud is not for your business if it doesn't need absolute resilience.
When did you first start hearing rumbles about this jam?
It's not inventing a lot of new things within Polkadot, but it's repackaging existing elements of Polkadot in a very elegant way that just makes sense.
Sure.
So having smart contracts finally in the same synchronous environment, so one chain, as the DOT token, as the staking system, and as governance.
Sure.
If you don't even want to commit to building a parachain, very soon you can deploy a contract on Polkadot Core in a Polkadot native manner.
Launch team wishes you good luck and Godspeed.
Space Monkeys blasting off with Kian Pay Money. He is a Polkadot fellow and one of the longest standing members of Parity so far. Very lucky to finally get him on the podcast. Kian, welcome to Space Monkeys.
Thanks for having me. Looking forward to have this conversation.
You just did a great presentation here on stage at Sub-Zero, all about the Jam protocol. And I do want to get there and I want to get your unique perspective of that. But what's also interesting, as I said in the intro, is that you've been part of the ecosystem for a long time.
January 2019.
Wow.
6 years soon.
Incredible.
I found them. They didn't found me.
Oh, really? Okay.
Yeah, so I was doing a master's degree in Amsterdam at the time in parallel and distributed computer systems.
Okay.
And one of the courses that I had was Introduction to Blockchain. As one of the sort of the edge of technology things that are happening in distributed systems realms. And I'm kind of grateful for that course because it sparked my curiosity into this whole thing.
Sure.
So before this and before my master's, I actually knew very little about blockchain. I've heard about Bitcoin. I knew a little bit about what Ethereum is, how contracts work, but that was basically it. After doing this course and when I was almost done with my master's, I was looking for a break. I wasn't really in a good place in life, if I'm being honest. So I was looking for like a change. And I thought, okay, let's get a job. That might be interesting, So at the time, I decided to find a blockchain-related job. And I looked around. Quite randomly, I stumbled upon this company called Parity, which was in Berlin. I kind of like going to Berlin. So I without knowing much, if I'm being honest, of what I'm stepping into, I stepped into something great, I think, in retrospect. At the time, I didn't really know much about Ethereum, Parity, or I remember I had an interview with Gav, and only some hours before the interview, and I Googled the name. I was like, shit, this man is like very, very known in the industry.
Absolutely.
I'm talking to him in like 10 minutes. Oh my God.
Oh my goodness.
So, yeah.
Were you ever involved in the tokens, the trading, the speculation side of crypto? It was always interested in the technology.
Yeah. Like for me, at the beginning, it was just what is technologically challenging and what could be where you can be on the edge of technology, and blockchain was one of them. To this day it still is. Admittedly though, now after 5-6 years, I have learned and agreed to a lot of the Web3 philosophies as well. But as in we should build softwares that are more resilient, and blockchains is one of the ways of doing that. That being said, no, in 2019 when I joined, I did not know anything about these things, and I only learned over time.
Is resilience for you really the driving philosophy behind blockchain?
Yes, it really, really is. And it's also difficult, and it sparks difficult emotions in me when I see the industry as a whole not follow this sometimes.
Tell me about it.
Yeah, I see a lot of instances of technology being created in the space where we're treating resilience as a spectrum. I don't need it that much, users are okay with this compromise. If a hack happens, we will refund them. And there's many instances of this in like bridges, and especially as we're going toward multi-chain, this is becoming more and more there.
Yeah.
To me, it kind of doesn't make sense. I think you're not using the right tool for the job if you're doing that. As in, Web3 cloud is not for your business if it doesn't need absolute resilience, if it doesn't need absolute security.
Yeah.
I mean, that being said, in all honesty, I might be proven wrong in many years on this, but my opinion is that it's not a spectrum. I think when we're building, especially infrastructure, resilience is non-negotiable. Maybe at a higher level on the stack, when you're building an application, you can make the trade-off. But our goal here, my goal here, I think Polkadot's goal is to build a scalable Web3 cloud that does not compromise an inch, an epsilon on resilience. I find a lot of value in what I'm doing day to day then, truly believing in this.
Where do you think these values come from? I'm speaking about you personally here, because as you mentioned, some people don't seem to care at all about resilience.
Yeah.
And is there anything about your life or your past or anything that you think have instilled these values in you? Why it's so important?
I would mostly attribute it to like great thinkers that I have talked to, mainly through Parity and Polkadot, starting from the founder Gavin Wood to a lot of the lead engineers. One of them, Sean, who just spoke on stage. I know the other, I don't know, too many names to name. But
Sure.
I think actually the Polkadot space is kind of this hotspot of people who are, really like original thinkers of Web3. And just being close to these people and hearing them repeatedly after some time, you're like, that what the guy is saying makes sense. It's authentic, it's genuine. And this is really attractive. This is really like, it brings a sort of motivation that, I think no amount of money or no amount of hype buzzwords can bring about.
So 2019, that was a couple of years after the ICO boom. And we were speaking about this before, vaporware masquerading as real utility.
Yeah.
And now, this cycle, we're all talking about, we're just being more honest about it. We're just saying it's meme coins.
Yes.
It's just cult of ideas, and it's not here for a long time. How do you feel about this direction of the industry? And do you see a path forward back to the foundations?
So first about like DeFi meme coins and stuff, I actually have a lot of respect for these products because I think they're a great fit for blockchain.
Sure.
They're like digital systems that can be controlled and governed by a blockchain, and like I think it's commoditizing a sort of gambling, for example, in the case of meme coins. Great. Like it's actually a very good fit.
Sure.
That being said, I think to achieve those original principles that you talked about, like having more resilient software at a more general level, we need to break out of it. We need to break out of it, and in Polkadot, we have been working on that for many years, actually.
Sure.
We just had this presentation from Talk where he introduced the idea of Polkadot Cloud, which is to see Polkadot no longer as this, blockchain that runs other blockchains, or with Jam, it's doing this and this and that. Really just think of it as like a general Web3 cloud, a cloud that has Web3 characteristics.
Sure.
And you can finally, when we're done with some, let's say, Jam related updates, finally you would be able to deploy software that is more resembling a normal application on a blockchain. I think this would be a big step towards bringing these Web3 principles to a more broader group of applications and a broader audience.
So you see applications in the future building on Web3 without the tokenomics and...
I hope so. I really, really hope so. So another, I don't know, can call it a hot take perhaps. I think if and when we finally break out of doing everything blockchain-based, doing everything smart contract-based, doing everything token-based, I think it's the beginning of the end for a lot of the baseless speculation that we see in the space. So in some sense, I think, the whole market cap of crypto, I think might shrink as the outcome of this, but for good, as in a lot of the speculation on things that are not bringing a lot of value would go away. And I think that's overall, it's going to be on many levels, unfortunate, maybe a lot of money might be lost, things like that. But I think it's the evolution that should happen. And I think overall it's good for the space, as in we would move toward seeing blockchain as a tool and not the goal itself. Like the goal is not to own tokens and trade them on a million different platforms that are all doing the same thing.
Yeah. Well, we saw the exact same thing happen with speculation on the internet. The story of this hype around the .com, bubble, and that popped, but here we are still using the internet today, right? It's not like it destroyed the industry.
Exactly.
It just destroyed the speculation.
Yes. I think some level of merging happening in some sense, as in like a lot of ideas are also, we're seeing merging into the same direction in the space.
Yeah.
All of that is, on some level painful for some, but good for the overall progress of the technology.
So now you're a member of the fellowship, which was sort of this decentralization of maintainers of Polkadot as it stands today. How do you think that's going, by the way?
So I'm not the best person to ask about this because I'm also part of Parity Technologies, which is one of the main companies contributing to the space. So I think, not all of my input about what to do, what's more useful, what's the most useful to do comes from Parity. I feel responsible to fulfill both, what Parity wants me to do and to some extent fellowship. And for me, it's a good second opinion. I like it. It's definitely useful to have in terms of like being resilient against for whatever reason, a company like Parity, just not being around. Like if Parity ceases to exist today, most Polkadot core devs have another organization where they can be paid, they can collaborate. There's meetings that you're running, like they can also communicate with one another. So we have a big hedge against knowledge being centralized in one place. Being part of both organizations, I don't think I would be able to actually see the flaws of the fellowship. And I'm sure there are some.
I guess it also gives you another stream of information as well, right? When did you first start hearing rumbles about this jam concept?
So Jam was originally an RFC to be added to Polkadot itself.
Yeah, I think it wasn't called introduced as Core Play. This was
called
that was the RFC.
Polka Jam. I don't know. Core Jam.
Core Jam.
Core Jam was. So there was two RFCs, Core Jam and Core Play, and I think eventually Gav, Rob, and others kind of realized, okay, this is too big to be an RFC. This is just like like at the low level, it's like altering pretty much everything. So it should be more like a new specification that we would develop in parallel, and at some point there would be some kind of a hard fork, and we would move to it.
And what did you think about that in the RFC form? Like, what were your initial thoughts?
Yeah. So on the RFC itself, I don't remember like being able to like fully comprehend it at that level. I also didn't like spend the time, and it was like, it's too many things going on. You have to choose your battles. But I think by the first time Gav introduced this on stage, I got a good understanding. And it kind of clicked for me quite early, as in, this really, really makes sense.
What clicked? What was it?
The same thing it's the gist of my presentation, that if you actually understand it, it's not inventing a lot of new things within Polkadot, but it's repackaging existing elements of Polkadot in a very elegant way that just makes sense. Like it just makes sense that we have created this powerful components within Polkadot. Now let's make it more general. I use this list in my presentation. I think it's useful to repeat it here.
Please.
Like if you look at the evolution of Polkadot in the last 2 years, it has been the same thing. We developed these Polkadot cores, which right now we use to run one parachain at a time. And it's been all about making these cores more flexible and available to everyone. So if you want more usage out of the single core, it's async backing. If you want multiple core, it's elastic scaling. If you want less than one core, it's on-demand core time. If you want to commit not to like 2 years of core time at once and 1 week or 1 month at a time, it's agile core time. And finally, if the question is, I want to do something other than a bloody parachain on my core, then it's Jam.
This is it, right? I mean, it seems like all this time we've been trying to make blockchains more flexible, more compatible and interoperable with each other, and more available, but it's always been in this paradigm of blockchain. Now we're like hiding blockchain under it all, so we can have this shared global state. But now it's really those useful aspects of, now we're calling it the cloud, that we're giving people access to, hopefully.
I think acknowledging that blockchains are an infrastructure for Web3, and one of them is a very good realization. So there is other aspects to it as well, such as data availability, secure computation, also things that we are not specifically exploring in Polkadot or Jam yet, such as zero knowledge verification. So in Polkadot and Jam, we rely more on cryptoeconomic security. Our analysis shows that at the moment, cryptoeconomic security is a much more cheaper way to achieve security than ZK, but someday this might change. But all of these are different Lego blocks, and blockchain is really just one of them. And acknowledging that A, it's just one of the many, and B, it's an infrastructure. It's not something that, we should have end users interact with. It's kind of powerful.
Yeah, it's kind of weird how we got this many people involved on the blockchain level and knowledgeable about it and talking about it like... I
was exactly thinking of this the other day. I think in retrospect, it's going to be laughable. Like we're going to laugh at this. Like we're like, man, that was crazy. But I think interestingly, I think it's really unique to Web3 and blockchain that we have brought so many people that, are not very technical or like at the very end, like retail investors and so on, all the way to the tech because of this speculation that's going on. Because there's money involved, everyone wants to come to the forefront. And I think it's kind of interesting. I think it brings definitely a lot of positive attention and hype to the space. I think it's undeniable. It also brings a lot of toxic attention to the space. There's a lot of greed going on. And again, as I said, I hope eventually it would be churned out. It would kind of fade away. At a very macro and meta level, it's just interesting. It's like a global social experiment that literally has never been done before.
Totally. No shade at speculation. Obviously, there's this dark side to it, but there's no doubt that it's like a spearhead that drives us forward at all times, right? And a lot of devs are in the space because they thought they could get rich And then maybe they did, maybe they didn't, but they started contributing and building as well. So you are now implementing Jam under a project called Gray Matter.
Yes.
Great name.
Yes.
What language are you using?
Elixir.
And where would we know Elixir from? What else is Elixir generally used for?
Elixir is a more user-friendly, sort of like an alternative to Erlang. Erlang is a very power user language developed by Ericsson for telecommunications. So all these cell towers from 30 years ago are using Erlang to communicate.
That's interesting.
It's very suited for fault-tolerant, highly distributed systems.
Okay.
I'm working with two teammates, Oliver and Francisco, who are both also part of Parity, and we're doing this completely as a side project.
Sure.
So our main goal is to make it to the first milestones where we understand the protocol, but maybe quite likely we won't push it to all the final milestones where we make our software production ready.
Where's the bottleneck? Is it your desire to do it, or is it with the language itself might not be performant enough?
At the moment, it's time. It's just that we're neither of us are spending full time on it. To have a production ready software, you need full time devotion.
Okay.
And our opinion might change, but at the moment I think I would be more impactful and more effective doing other things within Polkadot than focusing on the hardcore engineering of getting this Elixir client ready.
Okay.
If you note there about the Jam Prize, I think it's actually what I would like to see out of the Jam Prize is many teams doing the first two milestones, which means they understand the protocol deeply. And then, having a handful or something do all the 5 milestones, which means we have production-ready clients.
Right.
I think that would be a good outcome. And I'm probably one of the first category where we do the first milestone or second, and then we either merge with another team or just drop out and just, do something else.
Yeah, the incentive is there to encourage people just to become experts in the field as well. It's not all about building the clients, right?
Yeah, I mean the Jam Prize is a separate sort of monetary incentive for people to gain this knowledge, retain it, and build the software.
Yeah, but Elixir at the end, do you think it could make it all the way?
I think in principle, yeah.
Oh, really?
I think
cool.
it can. Yeah.
Yeah, because there's some that just aren't going to make it.
I mean, we have to see. I think the definition of on the 4th and 5th milestone, we have this definition that is a bit unclear, I think, at the moment, Kusama level speed and Polkadot level speed. And I mean, talking to Gav recently, he had some ideas of how this is defined, but we have to see how this fast enough needs to be defined.
Gotcha. Okay.
Yeah.
So you mentioned there that you might be a better use building, with the fellowship or Parity.
Yeah.
What exactly are you working on right now?
I think most of my focus, other than this Jam side project, is going toward delivering the vision of RFC. I hope I'm right. 33, minimal relay.
Yeah. Okay.
In that, emptying the relay chain out of the unrelated functionality to parachains and putting them on Asset Hub. And this has a very good, two disjoint and very needed outcomes. One is that the relay chain must be empty before we can upgrade it to Jam. That's
Really?
Yes.
Oh.
Empty as in, there shouldn't be any functionality left on relay chain other than running parachains. And which was
even token transfers?
Yes.
Wow.
Yes. And this was always the plan for Polkadot. The only thing that changed, let's say, in this last 6 months was that we bounced a lot between the idea of having many system chains or one system chain that scales with elastic scaling into multiple cores. And we're finally going toward the latter, especially with the Plaza blog post from Rob, this vision of let's have one super system chain that does smart contracts, does governance, does staking. So this is all going to move into the system parachain that is known today as Asset Hub. So kind of thinking about how we're going to migrate all of this functionality as palettes and data, all the accounts into Asset Hub, and how they're going to work now on Asset Hub. So it's actually a lot of work that has not been done before by us as well. So it's very engineering. It's a big engineering challenge. And a lot of the focus of myself, my team, and my parent team at Parity is going toward this task.
It's been floated that this Plaza, or maybe what we're calling it is the hub, is going to be ready by the end of Q2.
Yeah.
And this includes the EVM, the smart contract functionality. You're not working on that part, though.
Not directly, no.
Right. Does this seem reasonable? This time frame?
I think for a Kusama deployment, I think the timeline announced is that mid next year for Kusama, and end of the year for Polkadot.
Oh, okay, gotcha.
Yeah. But actually, I talked about the importance of why it's important to empty the relay chain. Let's also talk about the other side of it as well.
Sure.
So having smart contracts finally in the same environment, same synchronous environment. So one chain as the DOT token, as the staking system, and as governance actually is going to be, I think that's also a big enabler. People can build on Polkadot in a much more rapid way. It's actually in this list of let's make the cores more useful. I should actually add this as well.
Sure.
If you don't even want to commit to building a parachain, very soon you can deploy a contract on Polkadot core in a Polkadot native manner. Not going through another parachain, but doing it directly through Polkadot.
And who knows, maybe the contract you deploy today needs its own core in the future.
Yes, actually, yes. So we have thought about this path as well.
Yeah.
I think it's going to be the thing that Parity will work on a more like a business level after we finish this migration. Polish the path of a business coming to Polkadot, deploy on Asset Hub as a contract,
so cool.
Gain traction, and then graduate into being a parachain. I think interesting perspective is that we have this spectrum of how expensive or difficult it is to build something versus how much utility or how much throughput you get out of it. The simplest thing is smart contract. The most complex thing is a multi-core parachain.
Yeah,
we've kind of started from the parachain side of the spectrum, and now we're going. I think now we're going to focus and polish the path of going from 0 to 1, not 1 to 0. Going from simple to complicated.
Totally, much needed.
So after the migration is done, I believe the focus of Parity is mostly going to be to polish this path.
And speaking of graduating or going step by step, this hub, it's not going to be end of or mid 2025. Now it's hub time. This migration is going to be happening gradually, right?
Well, gradual in that, we first tested on testnet. We're going to then do it on Kusama and then Polkadot. The details of the migration, it's hard to predict. I don't think it would be gradual as in it would take 3 phases over 3 months, but whether it would be one burst of 30 minutes where the chain is down and everything is moving, or it's going to be more taking a few hours, it's something that I think our engineers need to experiment with and figure out what's the best way to do.
But I'm meaning kind of more about functionality here, staking might happen before governance happens, before all token transfers, or is it all maybe going to happen all at once?
I think it's going to be mostly together. The only two parts that are going to be disjoint is contracts and everything else.
Yep.
Because adding contracts is kind of independent.
Okay.
I think I think it's already on West End actually, or it's going to be on West End very soon. I mean, by the time this video is out, I think it's going to be live on a testnet.
Okay.
So contracts can go in somewhat independently, whereas the other components, again, this is something we have explored from an engineering perspective.
Yeah.
They are so interconnected, like governance staking tokens, and the DOT token, that I think it's going to be much easier to do them all at once.
Okay. And there are some other early accomplishments of the minimal relay, such as identity that got moved into its own system chain. Is that now going to be put?
It's an open question. I think it's not the first priority. I think luckily we haven't moved the core functionality anyway. Core stuff is mostly on the relay chain.
Yeah.
As in what developers, what we think Solidity contracts would want to play with. It's going to be DOT token, governance, staking, and these things are in relay chain going to go on Asset Hub. What we do with something like identity and core time and bridge hub, we'll see.
Yeah, bridge hub too, right?
Bridge hub too.
I guess that's going to have to come over.
I personally think
core time has its own chain. Yeah.
I think core time chain would benefit from being merged into Asset Hub because core time NFTs can then be programmed with this smart contract.
Yeah,
I think
totally.
that's more important than identity and stuff.
Okay, cool.
Yeah.
It's been a great talk, wide-ranging talk, and I know you're deep down and you see a lot of what's going on.
Yeah.
I'm sure this protocol, Polkadot, can use more help, can use more dev power, can use more expertise, right? How would you guide people in who want to get more involved?
For people who specifically want to get into development, we have programs such as the Polkadot Blockchain Academy.
Yeah.
Maybe for graduates of this academy then, or people who are already somewhat seasoned in blockchain, we have the fellowship. So fellowship is also an organization, not exclusive to, me and other Parity members or something. There is completely open. You can sort of step in, prove that, hey, I've worked for a couple of months on these PRs and, now I'm entitled to be on this rank. And, these rules are very clear there. But other than that, everything we do is end of the day very community driven and decentralized in that most of the good interaction and ideas are happening in our forum and our Twitter. And for someone to step in, it's kind of like an organic process, I would say. You start reading the Polkadot based guys on Twitter and a few of them. and you kind of quickly see where the narrative is going. Or
Yeah,
you read
yeah.
the forum, you sort the forum threads by like, the views and the traction. You can kind of see.
Nice trick.
You see where the narrative's going.
Okay. All the best with your implementation, and we'll see you on Open Dev soon.
Yeah.
Cool. Thanks, buddy.
Cheers.